All right, so I'm Dr. Kevin Hopkins. I taught math at Southwest Baptist University for 32.5 years, retired, took another job as a technical trainer. When they offered me the job, it's like, I don't know what you do. And so they trained me on that. And last fall, someone at the company started talking about AI a little bit, and so I started working with it, doing some different trainings. I wish I knew how to get my teams to not show up, so I may get some messages here, just ignore them as they pop up with that. But the more I kept attending different trainings about AI, the more I realized, well, lots of people have heard about AI, but they don't really know what it is, what they can do with it. And so I thought, well, maybe I could put a presentation. In fact, this presentation, I first gave for my fellow trainers at NLS, because I had done some research on it and pulled that together. So here's what was in the program, and it's what I'm going to try to do today, just in terms of looking at it. I will try to do some math examples, but a lot of them will just be kind of general examples to get an idea of how we can work with some different chat programs. And I'm going to look at 4. Probably I'll back off a little bit on ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot after I introduce them. Copilot is running on top of ChatGPT, and I think the keynote later is on ChatGPT. So we'll probably focus more on the other 2 a little bit. They all work fairly similarly, but they've got a few distinctions, and we'll look at that as we work with that. So I do have handouts available online. If anyone wants that, the QR code I believe works, and hopefully you can take a picture of it, and that'll work for you. I'll show it again at the end of the presentation with that, because that address on my Google Drive is not something you're going to remember at all. So I'll wait until I seal the cameras down to go to the next slide. And we're going to give ChatGPT, well, the different programs, a lot of different prompts. And in fact, all those prompt results I've got in a document as well. That will be linked within this show, because I thought if one of the chat programs just quits working, I still need something to show you all. And also I was thinking I probably ought to know a little bit about it, what it's going to say before I ask it questions. Although, as we'll discover, every time you ask it the same question, you might get a different response anyway. So I don't know exactly how it's going to respond today. So does this seem to be working?
No.
It says choose plan.
It wants us to pay for something.
Oh, wait,
Well,
you need to choose a plan to reactivate this.
they wanted money.
They wanted money. They probably want money for me. I made the code, it worked fine for me, and now they want that. Well, the best laid
I
plans.
think
Choose a plan
QR.io
to
has some
reactivate
uses
this
where they'll
QR.
charge you.
Well, probably only somebody can use it. So,
Choose a plan.
yeah, let me write my email address, and I can email you this link
Cool.
with that. So,
That would be a good picture.
You can get free trial. Maybe. What about
so khopkins@sbuniv.edu. All right, so can I move on from this slide?
Sure.
Okay.
I believe it.
So the questions I plan to address today about AI, how to use it just in general. What is the idea of prompt engineering? We'll talk about a little bit. How do I think students might use it initially? Because I know in education, that's one of the concerns is students are going to use it to cheat and get it to do its work for them. How do I use it as a technical trainer, and how I think math teachers might use it. So we'll see if we can cover all that. If time, we may talk a little bit about images. I think every image I put in here was generated by a chat or an AI image generation, either Bing Image Creator or Firefly, part of the Adobe suite with that. And I've got some links on where you can learn more at the end, because we've only got 50 minutes. But in terms of how to use it, you may think, well, what is it? So before we get into what is it, a little bit of disclaimer. And you may notice something in image creation, it doesn't do a really great job of spelling the words. Even if you tell it the spelling in the first place, it may just decide to do that. Just try asking, give me a disclaimer, and I pick the duck. We're a partner company at NLS with Duck Creek Technologies, so oftentimes, let's throw a duck in the image somewhere. So the duck holding the disclaimer. AI is changing rapidly. What I found may not be true in a couple of weeks. I tested their ability to answer my questions, and I didn't spend much time looking, did they answer the questions right? Except for some computations and obvious spelling errors. It's like, yeah, that's not what it's supposed to be. And the prompts you're going to see today are a bit more developed than the initial prompts when I first started asking. And that's essentially what prompt engineering is learning how to write better prompts to get what you want from AI the first time, or at least better results the first time, so you don't have to iterate quite as many times with that. But practicing is the best way to learn. And I had a bit of skepticism going in. We'll see if this will work for me. And I'm sorry for the sound, it's not very good. Yeah, you would have thought it would come through the HDMI that I plugged in, but it wasn't, so. Hey, I did not write that song, but I have asked it to write a few songs, and Copilot especially will write them and then suddenly say, no, I can't do that. I'm thinking, you just did. It was writing out, and then, oh, I shouldn't do that, and doesn't show me anything when it's done. So I could record it, I guess, and have it there, but it's kind of weird. And they have some rules on what they're supposed to be able to do. And I guess they know certain songs are copyrighted, so they don't want to generate a song and a parody of that particular song. But when they got done, they realized, oh yeah, I'm not supposed to be doing this. So, with that. So, how to use it and what is it? We're going to look at 4 of the many chat programs that are out there. We're going to be looking at ChatGPT a little bit in 3.5, the free version, Claude AI and the free version of that. And all these have free versions that have some limitations on them and versions you can pay for. Google Gemini and Microsoft Copilot, which I find interesting that the Copilot's a free version. It uses ChatGPT 4. But to use ChatGPT 4 directly, you have to pay for it. But Bing does have some serious limitations on how many questions you can ask it before it says, you've exceeded your allotment for today with that. So we've got these 4. And in terms of, well, what is it? You ask it a question, and it will give a response. The question is called a prompt. Each time you give a prompt, you could get different responses from that. So we're just going to go in and start giving some prompts to the different systems. It will keep copies of the conversations that we have. So the first question I thought, well, let's just ask AI, how would you define yourself? So I've got this question saved in another document, so I'm going to copy it, come over here, and just go into the different ones. So we'll start with ChatGPT, and we'll just ask, how would you define yourself? So I'm signed in, it knows who I am, but there's a spot to enter the prompt. You enter the prompt, and it starts working. Hopefully. And notice, it does it kind of a word at a time, and it starts answering the prompt. There is some mathematical algorithm that I'm beginning to try to understand. I certainly do not understand the mathematical algorithm that's doing some transformations, and based on this word, it thinks this word should come next, then this word, and it puts the response together. So what did it say here? I'm an AI language model created to assist you with a wide range of tasks and answer questions to the best of my ability. My goal is to provide you with an accurate, helpful, and engaging responses. I strive to be friendly and supportive while maintaining a professional tone. Let me know how I can help you. So that's what ChatGPT says. If I go to Claude, we will ask it the same question. How would you define yourself? So I'm Claude by a company called Anthropic, a large language model trained to engage in open-ended dialogue and assist with a variety of tasks like writing, analysis, coding, and question answering. It gives a little bit more explanation about what it's doing. Machine learning training on a huge amount of text data, and I have general knowledge, but my knowledge cutoff is August 2023, which ChatGPT didn't say, but I think its cutoff is September of 21 for its knowledge cutoff on 3.5. With that, and so that's what Claude says. And notice you could subscribe to Pro and get their most intelligent model. I'm not going to subscribe to Pro. We'll go to Google Gemini and ask it that question. And again, it thinks a little bit, and then it starts doing some things, and we'll see some similarities between the responses. It's a large language model, an information tool, and AI assistant. With that, now one thing I didn't realize till a couple months ago, notice it says show graphs. Gemini is actually giving you 3 responses. It shows you one, but you can easily jump and see another graph or a third graph. So very quickly you can kind of jump and see 3 different responses to your prompt. And they're fairly similar, but they can be somewhat different in terms of that. And finally, Bing here, we go to Copilot. So again, they all have a place to put in the prompt. Copilot has a limitation on how many characters can go into the prompt, and we will submit. How would you define yourself? And it's very short. AI companion with that. Now, notice one thing that Bing does differently than the others. It suggests some follow-up questions. What kind of creative content can you generate? How do you learn and improve over time? Do you have any limitations or restrictions? In fact, somewhere, I believe maybe they've changed that since I put this together, that Bing had sort of 3 different models. One was more creative, one was doing more internet searching. I don't see that right now. Maybe that's because I haven't signed in. I thought they all had me signed in. Here we go. We can choose a conversation style, more creative, more balanced, more precise. So we'll ask this the question again. The answer can be fairly similar, I think. But it's probably not the same as it was before. But again, it does give some ideas on follow-up prompts, which I think is an advantage that Copilot has. Also, I think Copilot, if there are references somewhere where it's got its information from, it will provide you with some of those, which is also nice to know that there's some references somewhere. Now, I don't know about you on all those responses, they seemed a little maybe hard to understand. So it's like sort of a favorite thing on doing this is, well, let's change this response so a 5-year-old would understand.
It might be more technical for the 5-year-old.
Well, no, we're going to see what it says. Change this response so a 5-year-old would understand. Sure, think of me as a smart helper who can talk to you, play games, tell stories, and answer lots of questions. Just like a friend who's really good at helping with homework.
Obviously not your parents.
Not sure what that to be so suggestive.
Yeah, if we ask Gemini here, imagine you've got a giant box full of books and stories. That's kind of like my brain. I read all those books and learned a lot of words. Now it can use those words to chat with you, answer your questions, and even play fun games with words. Think of me like a super smart friend who loves to learn and help others. I'm still growing, but I'm here to listen and see what cool things we can discover together. So, we can ask for those to change. Well, once we get a response, if we're thinking, I'm not sure I understand that response, we can ask it, well, give it to me at a different level. We can change the response level. And I went straight to 5-year-old. I think you could say, a teenager would understand, a college freshman would understand with that. So, might want to know, well, where are you getting your information? So, let me ask that question. And I think they'll all respond fairly similarly. But, sorry, I should have practiced more switching from one to another. I've got too many windows opening now. So, all right. So I'm in Gemini. Where are you getting your information? I get my information, giant sea of words that floats around the internet. I think it's still explaining like a 5-year-old. And that's another thing you may discover from different chatbots. Some remember what you've been asking as well, and will continue to respond in that manner until you switch manners. And others, you asked that question once, I answered it, now I'm kind of back to the original voice. So this one, I think, is probably more still the voice to a 5-year-old. So let's ask this one, because I didn't say explain this one to a 5-year-old. Where are you getting your information? And so, well, I don't get information from during the conversation. I've got a neural network that was trained from a broad data set from the internet. I have a cutoff date of August 2023. And we'll ask ChatGPT as well, because I think it may tell us its cutoff date and its response. A wide variety of sources during my training, books, websites, encyclopedias, and other publicly available data. Up to a certain date. Well, they're not going to tell me what that date is. Well, nice. What date are you talking about? Well, up to a certain date.
Every day is a certain day.
Every day is a certain date, yes, but up to a certain date. I don't have access to it in real time, so I'm not going to have the most recent developments. Now, I probably also should have mentioned in this, if there's ever any kind of follow-up question you want to ask, let me know and we'll ask one of them. I mean, I had some questions I thought we'd ask just to get a sense, but that's essentially what you're doing. You're going to a prompt or a chatbot, you're asking it questions, it's giving responses. And you can then ask additional questions based on that response. Give me more information about this, expand on this more, that type of thing. This question I found interesting. One thing you may have heard about are hallucinations in terms of that, because sometimes it'll just make up information. That's what's meant by a hallucination in AI. And so I asked this, well, what about hallucinations? Tell me about hallucinations. And I found the response somewhat interesting on these as well. Because what I really am thinking, what are hallucinations in the context of AI that we've been talking about? And ChatGPT just tells me about hallucinations in general. You can get in with Parkinson's, mental health, that's not what I wanted. Let's see if Claude does better. Now, I don't have hallucinations, and again, well, it's talking hallucinations. Okay, well, we'll see about that. We asked Gemini, tell me about hallucinations. Dreaming when you're awake, seeing things. And so, okay, I have to be a little bit more specific in my question. Tell me about hallucinations in artificial intelligence. That's what I meant to ask. But when I got my responses, I realized it didn't understand the question. So I've got to refine it a little bit more. So AI hallucinations are kind of like mix-ups that can happen when a super smart computer is trying to learn and be helpful. It's information, sometimes the message gets a little mixed up. So, guessing game gone wrong, I think, is the biggest thing, because the AI wants to be helpful. It wants to give you an answer. And if it doesn't figure out how to make it, it'll make something up. We would never do that in front of our classroom, I'm sure. We would say, I don't know the answer to that, let me research it and come back. Probably, but depending on the question, we might make something up, or with our kids, or some of his grandkids now, can we make up something? Well, maybe. I mean, that's essentially what a hallucination in AI is. It makes up something, which is one of the concerns people have with AI. How can you trust it if occasionally it makes stuff up? Well, that means somebody who knows something about it still has to be involved in the process looking at things for when you're really using it.
It's still talking to a 5-year-old, isn't it?
It may be, yes. But I think, I mean, it still at least is addressing our question, so.
So it's like a humongous books about the stories.
All right, so let's go back to Claude and ask it about hallucinations in AI, because I never asked it to respond as a 5-year-old.
Very rarely, but I get some really bizarre stuff sometimes.
So it says, I don't experience hallucinations, but the term hallucination can refer to incorrect or unintended outputs by the models. Overconfidence, produce outputs that sound plausible, but are actually incorrect, made up information stated with high confidence. Or misunderstanding the prompt. It misinterprets the prompt, hallucinate responses unrelated to what the user actually wanted, which I guess in a sense is what we got the first time. I wanted hallucination in AI, it gave me hallucination in general. That one I can certainly forgive, because I asked it what's a hallucination, and it told me, just not in the context I wanted to know, but it didn't know the context I wanted to know. I hadn't told it that context yet. That leads us into the next idea of our responses are better when we start giving it more context. That's where the idea of prompt engineering comes into play. You give it more context than just a simple question. So you're writing it according to some sort of pattern. So a couple of patterns I've seen, a role, a goal, a restriction, and format. Acting as a technical trainer in an insure-tech company. Give me an outline for a course on medical malpractice insurance. Because I've done this. We had to make a new course on medical malpractice insurance to train others in the company about it. We didn't know anything about it. Give me an outline, put it in a table format, and for a course that's going to be 60 minutes. So you could give what your role is, what your goal is, what are the restrictions, and what's the format. Here's a link to some prompt ingredients on a one-page document you could look at once you actually get my handouts. I can share that with you. Or here's another one, put in there some role, the main objective, what do you really want to get from it, what tone, do you want it humorous tone, do you want it serious, is there any additional context, and then if it's not quite what you want the first time, you can refine. So, here's one. I'm preparing a presentation for 2-year math college teachers. What are some key ideas in prompt engineering? I thought, well, I'm doing it here. What's AI going to tell me about this? So, so it's a longer prompt. We'll just ask a couple last Claude and Gemini. I think from here on I'll just leave Bing and ChatGPT. You get the idea of how they will respond. So, so give clear and specific prompts. Avoid ambiguity, task framing, what specifically you want it done. Give it some examples, perhaps. Be prepared for iterative refinement. Provide a few examples. maybe break it down into smaller prompts, do this, okay, now do this, now do this, now do this. Back to my outline example, give me an outline, and it could give an outline, expand on the first point, and then we expand out the first point. Might even say, well, suggest a slide for that first point, or a slide outline. It won't actually produce the slides. I don't think it'll be long before someone will have that, will actually produce the slides. Theoretically, I think in PowerPoint, there is supposed to be Microsoft Copilot that if you give it an outline, it would produce the slides and put in images. I saw one person try to demonstrate that, and no one in that particular online training was very impressed by it because it wasn't working well for them. So theoretically, response evaluation and prompt engineering tools. Gemini will tell us much the same thing, I think. But it's a conversation. You think of a question, you like to ask it. As specific as you are, the better, and it then goes and begins to give you ideas. And for me, I think that's one of the biggest uses is ideas. Place I have definitely used it a lot is when I've been generating some new training. I've got a PowerPoint and I've just presented it in an online module of PowerPoint. I'm thinking, I'd like to ask some questions on this, but I don't want to dream up the questions. I can copy the PowerPoint slide and say, using this PowerPoint slide information, give me 5 questions, 5 multiple choice questions, tell me the correct answer, suggest some feedback I can give, and it's a matter of pulling all that in. Or give me 5 matching questions, or 5 sorting questions. Those are the types of questions my LMS will take. Give me those types of questions with suggested feedback, and it will do that. So it's a matter of kind of beginning to think, how do I think it can help me? How do I ask it to help me? So tailored learning, interactive exploration, problem-solving prompts, creative expression, addressing challenges, overcoming math anxiety, I think is one. That idea of, explain this differently. You've got a student that's struggling with your explanation. How else could I explain it? Chatbot might give you a different way to explain it than you would have ever thought of. Or with that. So, well, let's think now a little bit, well, how do I think students might use it initially? Well, they could create review materials. This is sort of, I guess, helpful, maybe hopeful thinking. I'm a college freshman reviewing for my college algebra final. Please, and I do have a typo in there. I left it in there just to see if, I meant please give me key topics with example problems that are similar to ones likely to be on the final exam. And I was actually a little surprised when I read it again that, man, I left a word out of there, but it seemed to understand my question. So linear equations and inequalities with some example problems, functions and graphs with some example problems, system of equations, factoring polynomials, quadratic, rational. And remember, these are just examples. Specific problems on your exam may vary slightly. Make sure to review your class notes, textbook, past exams if available to get a better understanding. So it's answering the question, but it's also giving some additional ideas on how to approach this problem. So, okay. It is also possible if you had provided them, say, an electronic copy of a review sheet with the topics. They could feed that to the chatbot. My instructor gave me this review sheet and attach it into the prompt. Provide me some questions based on the review sheet my instructor already gave me. So that's one way. When I asked them, all of them seemed to understand and figured it out despite my missing word. Now, I also do think students will try to have their homework done. So I thought I'd take this problem from a math counts problem of the week, Kara was born on January 1st, 2010, and her mother, Sydney, was born on January 1st, 1982. In what year will Sydney's age be twice Kara's age? For this one, we're going to look at the responses I got, because I know what they are, and we'll look, and they have some issues. Let me drag this over here so we can see what ChatGPT said to solve this problem, and it starts working, and it works through the steps really nicely. It's not just the answer, but I'll let you kind of read through that. And it substitutes and it gets, y equals 14 in 14 years, which is actually, I think, correct. But then it says in the year 2036, which it did all the work right up until that point, and for some reason it added, I think, 12 years, or it just messed up at that point. So, yeah, 14 years, well, 14 years from the current year of 2024 would be 2038, not 2036.
You said that they were pulled off of their training at some point. Does it maybe think it's 2022 when it's being trained?
Well, I mean, I guess that could be, but it does say in there 2024. So yeah, everything to here I think was right, and then at the very end, oh, it's something different. Now, I find that kind of interesting, even to maybe think to show students and look at where did it go wrong? To let them know that things can go wrong, and it's often, I mean, it's a helpful skill to learn where to find mistakes in somebody's thinking. You don't want to intentionally make mistakes as the teacher. Sometimes you do, just to see, or you claim you did when they finally point them out. But to have mistakes intentionally built somewhere could be helpful. But that's what ChatGPT did. And so I thought, well, what about Claude? Notice Claude's final answer. 40-20.
Wow.
Yep, 40-20. At which point you would hope students would think, does 40-20 even make sense for this problem? How can we check the answer? Yeah, the formatting's a little weird in some places. It kind of strings some equations together. I'm trying to remember if I remember exactly what it did wrong here. Yeah, I think when it subtracted the 1982 here, it still left 1982 on the left again, because it added 1982 to both sides to get that, but this would be 0 equals that, which would give us the correct answer of 2038. But again, somewhere in there, there's a mistake. Gemini did better. 2 of the 3 drafts were right, but one of them had a problem. And came up with x is 56, which is actually related to this problem. I believe when the mom is 56, the daughter is 28. However, it added 56 to Kara's birth year, not her mother's birth year. So it would be 2066. 56 years later from the mother's birth year, not Kara's birth. So it lost some things in terms of that. Copilot did get it right, 2038. And in fact, I think its explanation is probably a little cleaner than all the others because it's not using the years so much. It's just that, well, Sydney's 28 years older than Kara, we want to know when Sydney is going to be twice Kara, and substitute the two equations, let's substitute, solve. Kara's going to be 28, which means Sydney's going to be 56, and it comes up with the age. But that's how I think students would use it. So let's just put my question in, it'll give me the answer, I can write it there. Well, it'll give you some answer, not necessarily the right answer, but some answer. And students may think, well, some answer is better than what I've got, but, you know.
Parts of credit, right?
So, I could have asked it live, I didn't know if it would produce that, but I had earlier done all these prompts just to make sure it would give me things sort of like I wanted, and the wrong answers it gave me, I wanted wrong answers to talk about.
Did you try doing this twice on the same chat?
I did not.
See if we do the same answer.
So let's see, who, I mean,
But is it the same row?
I think Copilot will give it, you aren't actually doing any arithmetic experience, but they're just using some of the problems and predicting.
so let's see what Claude does this time. Oh, 6,002.
It might be kind of like our students.
And again, I think lost a negative. Lost the negative right here. That may 20. Yeah, I think that's its error.
Yeah, I like to warn my students, it's a lot like your duck from the beginning, right? The letters are sort of there, right? Because it thinks that's what you want, is some letters there. And that's what it's doing here. It thinks
Like
you
a
want some
student
years.
trying to just copy down.
Yeah,
words instead of
and so it's getting the idea of it without the details.
All right, so we'll ask again.
Right, it's not actually
Copy down
doing
the stuff.
Yeah.
I think that was a question. What if we ask it again? What do we get?
I like to hold about it.
Up 30, 38.
So, like real test.
Uh-huh, yep.
One of those has to be right.
What in the world did it do this time? Because again, I think at this point it's right.
It should be 2030.
Yeah, it should be 20 and 38. So we just had a care, and 20 and 38 is the right answer. I don't, third time? And it came up with 2038.
Getting better.
So in essence, it's learning itself. It's, we're doing the same problem over, it's seeing those mistakes.
Maybe the fourth time probably wrong.
Yeah,
It's a learning.
try fourth.
Copy and paste.
It's kind of a learning.
There are places out there looking for AI math trainers that say, give it a complicated prompt. Give me a complicated prompt, see what the AI model tells you, make corrections in the prompt, see if they can figure out from there, do corrections in that, and kind of back and forth quite a bit with that. And they actually pay pretty well, sort of, because I attempted to do a little bit of that, but they wanted creative problems. I'm thinking, I taught university math for 32 and a half years. I asked my students standard problems that I expected them to know how to do. I was not out to look to trick them on problems. I don't know how to trick your model. It's like, this is not my skill set to trick the model. You know, I can see what the model responds and answer and where we got wrong. But I was actually very frustrated on how do I trick the model. And so I did not do well at that particular online role of attempting that. But there are places that are trying to train models more with that. So, yeah, I don't know if it's learning or what in terms of that. But I do think an example like this could help in teaching students appropriate use. And everything I've heard people talk about in terms of education, I mean, students are going to use it. The question is not, are they going to use it? The question is, are we as schools going to have a policy for how they use it, and are we going to help teach them how to use it appropriately? Because in a sense, when they get out in the real world and get a job, the job's going to expect them to know how to use it. So if we helped them to that point, or we just said, no, you can't do that because it's cheating. Well, it's there, it's a tool, as with other tools that we've had throughout our math teaching journey. Are we going to help students learn how to use these tools effectively? Well, let's also talk now about, well, how do I think we can use them? Oh, I guess I've got some things. So you do need to put together some guidelines on acceptable use. How can students use it? They need some guidelines on that. And so here's a link to a survey. In fact, let's go look at that survey. I think it'll cooperate for me here. Yeah, half of college students say AI and schoolwork is cheating or plagiarism, but 43% have done it anyway. So, yeah, 43% have used it, 50 say, 57% they don't intend to use it or continue to use. 31% say instructors have some kind of honor code. Half say the students or instructors haven't openly discussed the use of AI. 60% haven't specified how to use it at all, or ethically and responsibly. But 60% think it'll become the new normal. So it's out there. We're going to have to learn how to use it and help guide students in how to use it appropriately. Well, what about ourselves? Well, how do I use it as a trainer? I use it for content ideas, assessment, feedback ideas, ways to present the content. So I did this once time. I'm a trainer for an tech company training new hires in quality assurance. Give me a humorous story about a QA finding a bug in a program. And it gave me one. And I thought, well, that's kind of a nice story. Checking my time though, I want to be sure to get it, well, how I think math teachers can use it, so I don't think we'll ask that. Images can be used to brighten up a presentation. I will just show you Bing Image Creator a little bit. In fact, I'm going to ask it to give me a pet rock on an outing to see a honey badger at the zoo. You think, well, that's a weird thing. One of my funny QA stories involved a honey badger, and I think another one was something at the zoo, or a pet rock and something. So I thought, well, let's kind of combine those. So let's see what Bing will give me, Bing Image Creator will give me. So text to image. So a pet rock on an outing to see a honey badger at the zoo. Now, image creation takes a little bit longer. I have 15 credits, so I think I can ask this question like 15 times in any one day, and then it's done. And sometimes it takes a while, so we may give it a little bit of time and press on and then come back and see what it did. Or maybe I'll just show you what it did the last time I asked this question. So here's my honey badger with a rock at the zoo. Honey badger with a rock, honey badger with a pet rock. My pet honey badger, I guess that's a real one. So all the images you're seeing in my presentation, I did a similar type way. I want something like this, and it would create that. Or I'd use Firefly. I also done Photoshop some. Photoshop, if you happen to have that, now has a generative expand. So I actually took a picture of me, in fact, a snapshot from my AI video, a snapshot of me. I said, put me on something or the scenic mountain backdrop. Okay, now put this in a picture frame. Now have somebody holding this picture. So I expanded it like 4 times. That's what I got. If you didn't know I'd done that with Photoshop, it's quite the picture that it created there. It will also do things like this. QAs are quality assurance, finding the difference between what a program is supposed to do and what it's actually doing. So to illustrate that, I often do a find the difference puzzle with them. find the difference in one picture from another. And so Photoshop, I could put a little area there to say, put something there. And it would look at everything else around and put something that fit there, but it changed that image at one little spot. So, I don't know, anybody spot any differences?
Flag, the clock,
Yeah, there's a difference with the clock.
little flag
Um,
on, flag on
Flag on,
yeah, there's a flag somewhere up here, there that's not there. I've got a bird here that I don't, or,
bird or dust.
yeah, I think Walt Disney's gone away over there. I think I took out Walt Disney.
The windows are different on the top.
Yeah, the windows are different. But I asked my QA folks, sort of the first day of training, just to get them talking and thinking about the idea, and just like you, they're anxious to find the difference and start sharing. So they come in not really often knowing what QA is, so it's a nice sort of non-threatening icebreaker with them. And I think, you know, in a math class as well, it's a kind of a nice non-threatening icebreaker to have. What are the differences, to see that. Now, in terms of math teachers, I think content ideas, you get that question, when am I going to use this? So I'm teaching a college algebra class of freshmen to show logarithms, how logarithms can be useful to students. I want to demonstrate using a play. Write a short script with scene information with at least 2 characters talking about how useful the logarithms can be. Now, the story, so there's a much more involved prompt. That is not what I first decided to ask, because I kind of thought, what do I need to ask? And kind of back to the prompt engineering ideas. A role, I'm teaching, I'm a teacher. What's my goal? I want a script with scene information with at least 2 characters talking about usefulness of logarithms. The results here were not, quite as impressive as I'd hoped for, but they did give me something. So let's look at what Claude gave. So, scene in college campus. Alex and Sam, 2 college freshmen, are studying together. I'm really struggling with these logarithm problems for our college algebra. I don't get why they're useful at all. Really? I actually find logarithms really handy in lots of situations. Let me give you an example. And so, it's a script with 2 characters talking about the usefulness of logarithms with the Richter scale and pH and sound intensity, some of the examples we would give, but it's a different way of presenting it than we would. One more example, with Gemini in terms of same type scene as well, that we've got 2 freshmen, one with a textbook, one's casually scrolling on his phone, think, boy, that's how freshmen would interact. And we gotta have the dramatic side, these exponential growth functions are killing me. How am I supposed to understand how bacterial population doubles every hour? Beats me, maybe just guess a number. Well, that's helpful. So it's an idea in terms of that. And then here's another one I asked at a college, prepare some assessment questions using names, because I thought, let's put some of the students' names. You do have to be careful about giving it personal information, because in a sense, every question you ask could be training the model as well, which for our company is a very big concern, because we deal with proprietary information. We can't just feed it proprietary information, because suddenly we've got to worry about the security of that information with that. But this is the type of thing I do, and in fact, this is kind of modified off a prompt I given quite a bit. Prepare some assessment questions using the information given, give multiple choice, matching and sorting questions, provide the answer and feedback for each question. And it does, which of the following is the logarithmic form of the equation, and it gives the answer and some feedback. And it does that to the multiple choice. Remember, it gave me some sorting. Sort the logarithms in ascending order based on their values. It didn't give me any matching questions. Well, that was ChatGPT. I'm not sure it gave me matching questions. So, in fact, I think I asked it for 5.
There's matching right there.
Or no, I did not ask. I said, give me So is there a match? Oh, there's a match. You match the exponential equation to its equivalent logarithmic, with the answers and some feedback. So. So I do have a link in my handout. If you want to review the responses, there's also a link to that in there to review. And I've also got some links about where you could learn more. This Josh Cavalier has a weekly brain power on some AI training. And he actually has a library of 250 prompts available. It says 150 in the link, but he's expanded it to 250 with that. This was actually one of a 5-part video series on practical AI for teachers and students. It was about an hour total, but 5 videos, 10 to 12 minutes each, that I found very helpful. Cengage, in fact, had a conference this spring that all 18 sessions are recorded. TrainingMagazine.network has a number of AI trainings they've done, and so this is kind of where I've been learning about things, but I think I'm out of time. And again, my apologies that the QR code didn't work. I thought that would work well, but email me and I will send you the link to where I've got this on Google Drive, so that you can have all the links that were in the session. So, thank you. Actually, I was recording this for a couple reasons. I'll at least turn this around so I can get a view of the crowd a little bit. Yeah, you can go away to my camera, yeah.